It was supposed to be the happiest day of his life. A proud husband sat beside his wife, holding her hand tightly as she brought their beautiful baby girl into the world. The hospital room was filled with joy, laughter, and a few happy tears. Everything felt perfect. But just hours later, that same man would be on the phone with 911, his heart racing, hands shaking, and a newspaper clutched in his grip. What could have possibly gone so wrong? Earlier that day, while waiting in the hospital lobby during some routine checkups, the man had picked up a local newspaper just to pass the time. It was something he always did: skim headlines, maybe check the sports scores. But this time, a small article tucked in the corner caught his eye. At first, it didn't make much sense. It was about a high school student, an ordinary black teenager who had done something kind for a stranger. He'd offered his seat on the bus to a pregnant woman, nothing out of the ordinary. But the story took a strange turn. That woman had handed him a note before she stepped off the bus, and what was written inside would change everything. As he kept reading, the man's expression shifted. His eyes narrowed. His grip on the paper tightened. Something about the woman's description in the article, the name, the timing, even the hospital she mentioned, made his stomach drop. He read it again. Then again. Could it really be her? Could this have anything to do with his wife, with their newborn baby? Questions started flooding his mind, but none came with answers. All he knew was something didn't feel right anymore. The joy of holding his daughter was now tangled with a knot of confusion and fear. He rushed to the nurse's desk, asked for details, tried to stay calm. But when the dots began connecting, and the truth started to reveal itself, he didn't hesitate. He called 911. Who was that woman on the bus, really? What did that note say? And what secret was so powerful that it turned a joyful father into a panicked man dialing for help? The story doesn't end here. In fact, this is just the beginning. The moment the call to 911 ended, everything around him felt like it was moving in slow motion. The world that had just celebrated the arrival of a precious baby girl had now shifted into a fog of questions and dread. He stood in the quiet hallway of the hospital, the newspaper still in his hand, slightly crumpled from the tight grip. Nurses passed by, some smiling, unaware of the storm growing inside him. He glanced through the window of the nursery room, where his baby lay peacefully wrapped in pink. She looked so innocent, so untouched by the chaos he was about to unravel. His name was Marcus. 32 years old. A hardworking man, loyal to his wife, Emily. They had been married for 5 years and had dreamed of becoming parents for a long time. This baby was their miracle. Emily had struggled with fertility issues, and after years of disappointments, tests, and sleepless nights, they finally got the news they had been waiting for. Emily was pregnant. Marcus had cried when he heard it. It felt like a blessing, a fresh start. But now, standing there with a heavy chest and a head full of racing thoughts, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. That article had flipped his entire world upside down. It wasn't even supposed to be important, it was just a feel-good story buried on the second-last page. But it had changed everything. The pregnant white woman in the story, she had the same name as his wife. Not just the same first name. The same last name. Emily Harper. A coincidence, maybe. But then came the part that sent chills down his spine. The teenager had described her exactly. Blonde hair pulled into a messy bun, a tired look in her eyes, a small scar near her left temple, something only a few people noticed unless they were really paying attention. And most disturbing of all, the note she gave him ended with a signature, E. Harper. Not just initials. A full name. Marcus didn't want to believe it. He had even chuckled nervously at first, thinking there was no way this random story could be about his Emily. But the more he read, the more the details lined up. And the final piece, the most chilling part, the date mentioned in the story was exactly 9 months ago. The same month Emily claimed to have conceived their baby. It couldn't be just chance. Something was off. He paced the hallway, trying to think clearly. He didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe someone used a fake name. Maybe the journalist got it wrong. But what if they didn't? Inside the hospital room, Emily was resting. She looked so peaceful, a soft smile on her face as she held their baby girl. Marcus didn't know how to face her. Not yet. Not until he understood what was really going on. So he did something he never thought he'd do. He reached out to the local paper. The one that published the story. The woman who answered the call was kind but cautious. She said the reporter who wrote the piece was out for the day, but she offered to take a message. Marcus tried to keep his voice steady. He didn't want to give too much away, but he asked about the identity of the woman in the article. Was her full name really Emily Harper? Was there a photo, anything else that could confirm if it was a different person? The woman promised to get back to him as soon as she could. But deep down, Marcus knew he couldn't wait. That night, after making sure Emily and the baby were asleep, Marcus sat in the corner of the room and reread the article. He couldn't stop thinking about the teenager either. His name was Jordan. A 17-year-old high school senior with dreams of becoming a writer. The article described him as thoughtful, respectful, a kid raised right. It said he had written about the encounter on his blog, and that's where the story had gone viral before catching the newspaper's attention. Marcus looked up the blog. There it was. A simple layout. Nothing fancy. But the post was detailed. Jordan had written everything word for word. The moment he stood up on the crowded city bus, the surprised look on the woman's face, the way she had thanked him quietly and slipped him a folded note before she stepped off. And the note. Jordan had included a picture of it. It read, "You didn't have to be kind, but you were. You reminded me there's still good in this world, and I hope you know how rare that is. Someday, I hope this act of kindness comes back to you tenfold. You've changed my day, and maybe even my life. Emily Harper." That was it. The name. The handwriting. Even the way she signed it. It matched birthday cards Marcus had seen Emily write. Every loop, every flourish, it was her handwriting. There was no denying it now. But why? Why was she on that bus alone 9 months ago? And more importantly, what did she mean when she said, "You've changed my life"? Marcus didn't sleep that night. His mind played through every memory of the past year. Emily had said she needed space around that time. She told him she wanted to visit her sister in another city for a week. He didn't question it then. She looked tired, emotionally drained, and he figured the time away might do her some good. But what if that trip was never to her sister's? What if she had been hiding something all along? The next morning, Marcus asked one of the nurses if he could step out for some air. He left the hospital and drove to the address listed at the bottom of the blog, just an inbox for fans to send messages, but he hoped he could reach Jordan. He sent an email. Honest, but vague. He didn't want to scare the kid. He just asked if they could talk about the woman on the bus, and if he remembered anything else, what hospital she said she was going to, where she got off the bus, anything at all. An hour later, Jordan replied. The email was short, polite. He said he remembered the woman well. She seemed nervous, even scared. She didn't look like she had much money and seemed to be riding the bus alone, clutching her belly like she was protecting something. When he offered his seat, she looked surprised, like she wasn't used to kindness from strangers. She mentioned going to a nearby clinic, not a hospital. Said it was urgent, but didn't go into details. Marcus's heart sank. A clinic. Alone. Nervous. Why would Emily hide all this? Back at the hospital, things appeared normal. Visitors came and went. Emily's mom brought flowers. Everyone congratulated the couple. But Marcus was falling apart inside. Every smile he gave felt forced. Every time he looked at the baby, he wanted to feel joy, but it was mixed with confusion and fear. Then, something else happened. The next day, Marcus received a call from a blocked number. He almost didn't pick up. But when he did, a woman's voice came through the line. Calm. Older. She introduced herself as the nurse who had treated a patient named Emily Harper at a local women's clinic 9 months ago. Marcus froze. She said she saw the article, and it had reminded her of that day. She wasn't supposed to talk about patients, but something about the story made her feel uneasy. The Emily Harper who came to their clinic didn't have insurance. She paid in cash. She said she was scared to tell her husband about the pregnancy. She didn't say much else, but she seemed desperate, and alone. Marcus could barely breathe. He thanked the nurse, then hung up and just sat in silence. So many questions. So many possibilities. Had Emily been pregnant before this baby? Was the child even his? Or was there something else, something darker, that she was hiding? Why didn't she tell him? Who was really being protected here? The answers still lay just beyond his reach, but Marcus knew one thing for sure. The truth was no longer optional. And once it came out, nothing would ever be the same. Marcus didn't go back into the hospital room right away. He stood just outside the door, watching Emily through the small glass window. She was holding their baby girl, gently rocking her, humming a lullaby Marcus had heard her sing before. Everything about the scene looked normal, loving, even peaceful. But now, Marcus couldn't tell what was real anymore. He kept thinking about the nurse from the clinic, the note in the article, the scar that Jordan mentioned, and the way Emily had gone quiet for that 1 week so many months ago. Every small detail, every memory, was now up for questioning. He knew he couldn't just confront her, not yet. Not without knowing more. What if he was wrong? What if this was all just an awful misunderstanding? But what if he was right? Marcus decided he needed help. There was one person he trusted more than anyone else in the world, someone who had always told him to trust his gut but never act without clarity, his older sister, Nicole. She was sharp, thoughtful, and had worked as a paralegal for years. She knew how to read between the lines, dig up facts quietly, and keep things private. That afternoon, he met her in the hospital cafeteria and laid everything out. The newspaper article, the note, the blog, even the call from the nurse. Nicole listened without interrupting. When he finished, she leaned back and took a breath. "I don't think you're crazy," she said. "But you're going to need proof. Real proof. Before you bring any of this to Emily, or anyone else." Marcus nodded. "How do I get that?" "There's one way," she said slowly. "A paternity test. Quietly. No drama. Just the facts." The idea made Marcus sick to his stomach. The thought of testing his own daughter felt like a betrayal. But then again, so did the possibility that Emily had kept such a big secret from him. He didn't want to doubt the baby, he already loved her more than anything. But he needed to know. Nicole promised to help. She knew someone at a private lab that could handle the test discreetly, without any questions or records tied back to the hospital. Marcus didn't know how to feel. Every step he took toward the truth seemed to take him further from the family he thought he had. While Nicole worked on arranging the test, Marcus started paying closer attention to Emily's behavior. At first glance, she seemed fine, tired, yes, but every new mom was. But Marcus noticed little things now. She avoided talking about the pregnancy, brushed off questions about the baby's due date, and seemed unusually nervous every time a nurse brought in paperwork. One evening, while Emily was asleep, Marcus opened her purse looking for lip balm. He wasn't snooping, at least that's what he told himself. But something caught his eye. Tucked in a side pocket was an old bus ticket. Faded. Nearly torn. But the date printed on it matched the day from the article. 9 months ago. The same route mentioned in Jordan's blog. His hands went cold. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Jordan, the teenager who had written the blog, was getting unexpected attention. His post had gone viral after the newspaper picked it up. Messages poured in from people praising his kindness, asking for interviews, wanting to know more. But among the usual comments was one strange message that stood out. It came from a private email address and said only, "You saw something you weren't supposed to. Stay quiet." Jordan didn't know what to make of it. He showed it to his aunt, who raised him. She thought it might be a prank. But Jordan wasn't so sure. The more attention the story got, the more he felt like he had stepped into something bigger than he understood. Out of curiosity, he reread the note the woman had given him. At the time, it had felt heartwarming. Now, there was something eerie about it. Almost like a goodbye. He began to wonder, had that woman been running from something? Back at the hospital, the DNA test was quietly collected. Nicole had arranged everything with precision. Marcus handed the sealed swab to the lab tech himself. Now, it was just a matter of waiting. During this time, Marcus tried to act normal. He fed the baby, held her close, smiled for pictures. But inside, he was constantly replaying every moment of the past year. He remembered the night Emily came home from her trip. She had looked tired, pale. Said it was just stress. He had believed her without question. But now, nothing was certain. And then came another twist. Late one night, while rocking the baby to sleep, Emily's phone buzzed on the nightstand. Marcus normally never looked at her phone, but his eyes caught the name on the screen, unknown contact. The message preview said, "We agreed you wouldn't contact me again." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. He picked up the phone, hands trembling. The message was part of a thread. Emily had deleted most of it, but one earlier message hadn't been erased. It read, "The baby, is she okay?" Marcus sat down slowly, trying to breathe. Who was this person? Why were they asking about his daughter? He took a screenshot, saved the number, and returned the phone to where it was. Emily stirred but didn't wake up. Marcus couldn't sleep that night. He didn't know what was worse, the not knowing or the little pieces he was beginning to know. The next morning, Nicole called. The DNA results were in. She didn't say much over the phone, just told him to come over right away. He drove in silence, gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. When he arrived, Nicole handed him the envelope. "You sure you want to open this?" Marcus stared at it. For a moment, he thought about tearing it up. Maybe it was better not to know. Maybe he could go back to pretending. But he opened it. And when he saw what was inside, he didn't say a word. He just sat back, staring at the paper, silent. Nicole watched him carefully. "Whatever it says, we deal with it. Together." Marcus didn't respond. He just kept reading the same sentence over and over again. The truth was finally there, printed in black and white. But the mystery was far from over. In fact, it had just taken a darker turn. Because now, Marcus had even more questions, and even fewer answers. Marcus stared at the DNA report, his breath shallow and his mind spinning. The page didn't scream or shout, but its message hit harder than anything he could have imagined. The baby girl, his little angel, wasn't biologically his. The words blurred as his eyes filled with tears. He didn't know whether to cry out in pain or keep everything bottled inside. For a few long seconds, he just sat there in silence, frozen. Nicole reached out and gently took the paper from his hands, reading it again herself, as if to double-check. But the results were clear. There was no mistake. His heart ached, but more than the shock, more than the betrayal, it was the not knowing why that was eating him alive. Emily hadn't said a word. No hint. No guilt. Just soft smiles, sweet lullabies, and quiet nights pretending everything was perfect. But it wasn't. And now, he couldn't pretend either. He needed answers. But the way this was unfolding, Marcus was beginning to realize that this wasn't just about a baby, or a note, or a hidden clinic visit. There was something bigger. Something darker. That night, Marcus didn't go home. He told Emily he needed to run an errand and drove around for hours. He stopped at the edge of the city, parked near an empty overlook, and just stared into the darkness. His phone buzzed again. Another message from that same unknown number. This time it read, "We need to talk. She's in danger. You don't know the full story." Marcus's heart pounded. What did that mean? Was this some twisted game? Was the baby at risk? And who was this person who kept texting his wife? He saved the number and, this time, decided to call. The line rang once. Then twice. Then someone picked up. There was silence on the other end. Just breathing. Marcus broke it. "Who are you?" The voice was male. Calm. Older. "Not who you think I am. But I'm someone who's been trying to protect Emily, and now your daughter." Marcus's hands clenched around the steering wheel. Protect her from what? A pause. From the man she ran from, the voice said. From the truth that would ruin her life, and possibly yours too. Marcus's stomach turned. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. This was bigger. "Start talking." The man hesitated. "I can't say much over the phone. Meet me tomorrow. I'll tell you everything. There's something you need to see. Something she's been hiding." "Why should I trust you?" Marcus asked. "Because the woman you love is not who you think she is. And if you don't find out the truth soon, more people will get hurt." The line went dead. Marcus sat there, the sound of wind outside the car louder than ever. Every second dragged like hours. His mind was racing. Could this man be lying? Was he threatening them? Or was he telling the truth? Either way, Marcus couldn't ignore it. The next morning, he returned to the hospital. Emily smiled as he entered, acting like nothing had changed. The baby was asleep in her arms. For a second, Marcus almost wanted to forget everything. But he couldn't. He gently asked Emily about the old bus ticket he had found. She froze, her smile faltering just a little. "I must have forgotten it was there," she said, brushing it off. Marcus nodded slowly. Was that from your trip to your sister's? Yeah, she said, almost too quickly. I didn't drive that day. He didn't press further. Not yet. But now he knew she was lying. Again. Later that afternoon, he told her he needed to step out for a quick call. Instead, he drove to the address the man had sent him that morning, an old bookstore downtown, quiet, almost forgotten. When he arrived, a man was already waiting. Late 40s. Worn coat. Serious eyes. He introduced himself as Alan. Alan didn't waste time. He pulled out an envelope from his coat and handed it to Marcus. Inside were photos, grainy but clear enough. One showed Emily at the clinic. Alone. Another showed her getting into a car that wasn't hers. A third, it made Marcus's chest tighten. Emily, holding her stomach, arguing with a man outside the clinic. The man looked angry. Too close. Almost threatening. Alan spoke softly. That's her ex. Marcus blinked. What? Emily never told me about him. She wouldn't, Alan replied. He was dangerous. She tried to leave him years ago. When she found out she was pregnant, she came to me for help. Said she didn't want the baby to grow up around that man. She disappeared after that. Changed her name. Moved cities. Marcus's world tilted again. Changed her name? Her name isn't Emily Harper. Alan shook his head. She started using that name afterward. To stay off his radar. The man in those photos? He's been looking for her. Still is. Marcus tried to speak but the words got stuck. And the baby? Alan nodded. His. But Emily never told him. She didn't want him near the child. She just wanted to give her a better life. Marcus leaned against the wall, trying to breathe. Everything he thought he knew about his wife was unraveling. Her name. Her past. Even the child he had loved from the second she was born. But now the fear in Emily's eyes made sense. The random night she cried in her sleep. The way she jumped at loud noises. She wasn't just hiding a mistake. She was running from a threat. Alan stepped closer. You need to decide what you're going to do. But you should know, he's getting closer. I've seen his people asking around again. If he finds her, it won't end well. Marcus nodded slowly. The weight of the decision ahead was crushing. He left the bookstore with the envelope tucked under his arm and his heart heavier than ever. When he returned to the hospital that night, Emily was asleep again. The baby stirred in her crib. Marcus walked over and gently picked her up. She opened her tiny eyes and looked up at him. No matter what the papers said, no matter who her biological father was, this little girl felt like his. She was innocent. Caught in a web of secrets and fear. And Emily, she wasn't just a liar. She was scared. Maybe even protecting them both. Marcus sat there in the quiet of the hospital room, holding the baby close. Everything was leading up to something. The truth was almost out. The past was chasing them. And now, Marcus had to make the most painful decision of his life. Protect the lie or expose everything. And once the truth finally broke free, none of them would ever be the same again. Marcus sat in the dim light of the hospital room, rocking the baby gently, his thoughts tangled in a storm of emotions. Emily lay asleep in the hospital bed, her breathing steady, unaware of the truths unraveling just feet away. The envelope from Alan was still in his coat pocket, the photos inside burning like coals against his chest. And yet, in that moment, despite the confusion, betrayal, and fear, Marcus felt something unshakable. He loved this child. Not for her DNA. Not for her story. But because she had become his entire world the moment he saw her tiny hands. But then, just as he felt a hint of clarity, his phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. But this one wasn't from Alan. The message was short. You think you know everything. You don't. Meet me. Alone. Attached was a location pin. It was a diner on the far edge of the city, one that hadn't been open in years. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Who was this now? Was it the man Emily had run from? Was it a trap? But his instincts told him something else. There was still more to this story. And someone didn't want him to walk away without knowing it. He glanced at Emily again. Still asleep. Then at the baby, who had drifted off in his arms. He left a note beside the crib, just in case. The drive to the diner was quiet. Too quiet. The streets were nearly empty, the the kind of silence that makes everything feel more intense. When he pulled into the cracked parking lot, he saw a figure already sitting in one of the booths inside, the flicker of a dim lamp making their shadow stretch across the window. Marcus stepped in slowly, his pulse pounding in his ears. The person stood up. It was a woman. Mid-30s, sharp eyes, hair pulled back in a tight bun. She looked familiar, but he couldn't place her. "I'm Jordan's mom," she said without emotion. Marcus blinked. "Jordan? The teen from the article?" She nodded. "He told me about the note. About the woman on the bus. I didn't think much of it until a few days ago, when I got a call from someone I haven't heard from in over 10 years. Marcus narrowed his eyes. "Who?" The woman sat down, motioning for him to do the same. "My sister." Marcus didn't move. "Your sister?" She nodded. "Her name's not Emily. It's Sarah. Sarah Mason. And she's my sister." The words hit Marcus like a hammer. "She disappeared 10 years ago," the woman continued. "Told us she was getting away from a bad relationship. But she cut off everyone. No calls. No messages. My mom thought she was dead. And then Jordan sees her on a bus and doesn't even realize it. She gives him a note, and suddenly she's in the news again. That's how I knew she was still alive." Marcus felt the room spin. "Why didn't she ever contact you?" The woman looked away. "Because of him. The man she ran from. You don't know how dangerous he is." Marcus leaned in. "Who is he?" She hesitated. "His name's Leon Tate. Used to work for some people, bad people. Not just abusive. He was involved in illegal deals, dangerous circles. When Sarah, Emily, found out she was pregnant, she tried to leave. But Leon, he made threats. She barely escaped." Marcus's voice was hoarse. "She never told me any of this." "She wouldn't," the woman said. "Because she thought if she brought anyone back into her life, even family, it would put them in danger. That's why she created a new identity. Married you. Hid everything." Marcus sat back, stunned. All this time, he'd thought she was hiding out of shame or guilt. But now it seemed like she'd been trying to survive. "Why tell me this now?" he asked finally. "Because Leon's back," she said. "He's been looking for her. And is not working alone anymore. I got a warning last night, someone saw him near the hospital. If he finds her." She didn't finish the sentence. Marcus stood abruptly, his heart thudding harder than ever. "I need to get back." But just as he reached the door, she called after him. "There's something else," she said. Marcus turned. She held up a crumpled piece of paper. This is from a clinic Sarah visited after she found out she was pregnant. It's not just a paternity note. It's a medical warning." Marcus took it and read quickly. The words were blunt. "Patient advised of high-risk complications. Baby may carry inherited condition linked to biological father. Urged to consult genetic specialist." His throat went dry. "What condition?" She shook her head. "I don't know. But if it's true, the baby might be in danger. That's probably why she was so careful. Why she avoided doctors. She wasn't just hiding. She was scared of what she'd find." Marcus didn't wait another second. He rushed out of the diner and sped through the city, breaking red lights, ignoring horns. Every second felt like a countdown. If Leon was near the hospital, if the baby had a condition nobody knew about, if Emily was about to be found after years of hiding. The stakes weren't just emotional anymore. They were life or death. When Marcus reached the hospital parking lot, he saw flashing red and blue lights. 2 police cars. A nurse ran past him into the building. He rushed inside, heart pounding so hard he thought it might break through his chest. And then he saw it. Emily, standing at the nurse's desk, holding the baby close. Pale. Shaking. Surrounded by 2 officers. She locked eyes with Marcus. And whispered, he was here. Marcus rushed forward. "He tried to take her," Emily said, her voice barely holding together. He said she's his." Marcus turned to the officers. "Where is he? Where did he go?" But no one had the answer yet. And that's when Marcus realized. This wasn't over. Leon wasn't just trying to find Emily. He was trying to take the baby. And he wasn't finished. Not yet. Marcus moved in front of Emily and the baby instinctively, heart racing as the officers spoke into their radios. Every sound in the hospital felt louder, the shuffle of feet, the distant beeping of machines, the soft whimper of their daughter. Emily's arms trembled as she clutched the baby tighter, and her eyes, those wide, terrified eyes, told Marcus everything he needed to know. This wasn't just a scare. Leon had been here, and he hadn't come just to see them, he'd come to take them. An officer gently asked Emily for a description. She nodded quickly, voice shaky but clear. Tall, shaved head, scar near his right eye. He wore a black jacket. Said he was family. When I said no, he got angry. Security came, and he ran. Marcus turned to the officer. What now? We've put out an alert, the cop replied. But if he's smart, he won't stick around. We'll need to move your wife and child to a safer location. Temporary protection. Emily looked at Marcus, silently asking if she could trust them. He gave her the faintest nod. We'll do whatever it takes, he said. They were moved to a private security room inside the hospital while arrangements were made. Marcus stayed close to them both, watching every face that passed, every shadow outside the door. It was almost morning now, and the weight of the last 24 hours sat heavy on his shoulders. But somewhere in the chaos, a strange clarity was settling in his chest. He loved Emily. He still loved her. Not just the version of her that he married, but even the scared woman who ran from danger, changed her name, and tried to build something real from broken pieces. He loved their daughter. And no DNA test, no secret, no threat could change that now. A knock at the door snapped them all to attention. It was Jordan. He stepped inside nervously, holding a folded piece of paper. I found this in my backpack, he said softly. It must have fallen out that day on the bus. She handed it to me, but I guess I never saw the second note. Emily's eyes widened. Second note. Jordan handed it to her, and Marcus read over her shoulder. If anything happens to me, protect her. Her real father isn't just dangerous, he's hiding something. He's not after me. He's after her because of what she is. Marcus stared at the words. What she is. Emily closed her eyes slowly. When I got pregnant, Leon insisted on a test. Said he had a family condition, something rare. He never explained much, but when the clinic saw the results, they urged me to go deeper. They found abnormalities in the fetus. Nothing dangerous on its own, but something unique. A rare genetic marker. I didn't understand it. But Leon did. And he told me that our daughter would be valuable. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Valuable how? Emily looked at him with haunted eyes. I think he planned to sell that information. Maybe even the baby. I think he made deals with people. And when I ran, he lost more than just a partner, he lost an asset. Marcus could barely breathe. You think he wants to use her? For money? Experiments? I don't know, Emily whispered. But I couldn't take the chance. Before Marcus could respond, a sudden buzz came over the officer's radio. We've got him. Suspect in custody. Found trying to leave the underground garage. He was armed. Emily gasped, holding the baby tighter. Marcus ran out of the room, following one of the officers down a hall toward the hospital's lower level. In the concrete basement near the parking area, Leon stood handcuffed, leaning against a police car. His face was bruised from a scuffle, but he still smiled as Marcus approached. You don't even know what she is, Leon hissed. You think this is about fatherhood? About some failed relationship? Marcus didn't say a word. Leon leaned forward. She's special. And soon, someone else will come looking. You think this ends with me? You think locking me up changes anything? You're wrong. Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice. She's not yours. Not anymore. And I don't care what you think she's worth. She's not a product. She's our daughter. Leon's grin faded, and the officers led him into the back of the car. Back upstairs, Marcus found Emily crying softly. He sat beside her and wrapped his arms around them both. He's gone, he said quietly. At least for now. But the weight of Leon's last words still echoed in his head. Someone else will come. In the following days, things slowly returned to a strange version of normal. Emily was discharged, and they were relocated under a temporary protection program. A genetic specialist was consulted privately. The results came in quietly, yes, their daughter carried a rare genetic marker, something linked to extremely low immune system disorders, but it was dormant. Not dangerous. Not now. Still, Emily remained nervous. And Marcus, he couldn't shake the feeling that the story wasn't quite over. Then, 2 weeks later, a small envelope arrived at the safehouse door. No return address. Inside was a single flash drive and a note that read, "You stopped one. But others knew. Watch carefully." Marcus plugged the drive into a secured laptop. A video opened. Grainy security footage. Leon. In a dim room. Speaking to someone just off camera. She doesn't know. But there's more than one. Then static. Marcus stared at the screen. "More than one what?" he whispered. Emily walked in, holding the baby, and saw the look on his face. "What is it?" she asked. He looked at her, heart pounding again, the peace already slipping away. "I think this was just the beginning." And somewhere, far beyond their quiet hiding place, eyes were already watching again. Marcus sat on the edge of the couch, flash drive still in his hand, staring at the frozen screen of the laptop. Emily stood nearby, holding the baby against her chest. The tiny girl stirred in her sleep, her face calm and unaware of the storm swirling around her family. Marcus knew that nothing in their lives would be the same again. They'd come so far in just a few weeks, from the joy of their daughter's birth to the terrifying realization that Emily's past wasn't just a shadow but a living threat. And now this final clue, this whisper from the dark, confirming that Leon hadn't been acting alone. But what haunted Marcus more than anything was Leon's final words in the video. "There's more than one." Emily moved beside him and slowly placed her hand on his shoulder. "We can keep digging," she said gently. "Or we can live. We did what we had to do. He's gone." Marcus looked up at her. "But if there are others, if there's even a small chance that someone else comes for her, don't we have to know?" Emily sat beside him. "I spent years running. Looking over my shoulder. Changing names, staying invisible. I thought I could keep her safe by erasing who I was. But now I see that doesn't work. The only way to protect her is to be seen." They made a quiet decision that night. Not to run again. Not to hide. But to face the past, uncover whatever truths still lingered in the shadows, and prepare for whatever might come. The next morning, Marcus contacted a private investigative journalist, someone he trusted, someone who had once helped a friend uncover corruption in a local agency. Her name was Trina Barnes. Smart, tough, and connected. Within days, Trina had traced the IP address from the flash drive's metadata to a small, defunct medical research lab in Atlanta. It had been shut down 5 years ago, following a government investigation into unapproved genetic testing. But its former director, Dr. Kenneth Vale, had quietly disappeared before charges were filed. Trina showed Marcus a file filled with old articles, interviews, and a blurry photo of Dr. Vale standing with a group of men, one of whom was unmistakably Leon. "He wasn't just a thug," Trina said. "He was a middleman. He probably recruited vulnerable women for the lab. Emily wasn't the first." Marcus swallowed hard. "And our daughter?" Trina nodded. "She might carry something they were looking for. Something they couldn't replicate. If that's true, she could be one of a kind." The puzzle pieces began to connect. Leon's obsession. His threats. The genetic test Emily had mentioned. The urge to keep everything hidden. But what was still unclear was what exactly made their daughter so special and whether anyone else knew. Trina suggested going public with part of the story. Not revealing the baby or Emily, but leaking information about Leon's connection to the illegal research. If they exposed enough of it, others who were involved might panic, flee, or surface. A week later, an article appeared in a major investigative blog, Hidden Trials and Human Costs, the story of Leon Tate and the disappearing genetic files. It caused a small stir. Not front-page news, but enough to shake a few trees. 2 weeks later, Trina received an anonymous tip. "Check the old Vale property in Savannah. Basement. Locked door." Marcus and Trina went together. The house was abandoned, falling apart, half swallowed by vines. But in the basement, behind the locked door, they found rows of metal filing cabinets, dusty hard drives, and a dozen sealed containers marked with medical codes. They called in authorities, who immediately launched an official investigation. Over the following days, news broke about the recovery of illegal research material linked to genetic manipulation. But more importantly, they uncovered files on at least 6 women who'd gone missing years earlier, names never reported in connection to Leon or Dr. Vale. It confirmed Emily's worst fears. She had narrowly escaped a horrifying fate. For Marcus, it was a strange kind of closure. The danger wasn't gone, not entirely, but it had been dragged into the light. And sometimes, light was enough to make even the darkest forces disappear. Life slowly settled. Emily began going by her real name again, Sarah. They moved to a small home outside the city, near Sarah's sister and nephew Jordan, who visited often. He held the baby every chance he got, always gentle, always smiling. Sarah and her sister began rebuilding their relationship, and the baby's laughter filled their once quiet rooms. Marcus went back to work part-time, but his priorities had shifted. He spent every spare second with his daughter, savoring every giggle, every milestone, every late-night feeding. He'd lost faith, then found it again, in the unlikeliest way, through truth, resilience, and love that refused to quit. And yet, sometimes at night, when the world was quiet and safe, he'd replay those last words from the flash drive in his mind. There's more than one. He didn't know exactly what Leon had meant. Another child? Another version of their daughter? Another secret locked away somewhere in the world? But now, that mystery didn't paralyze him. It reminded him to stay ready. To protect what mattered. To never forget that beneath every surface, a story might be waiting to be told. A truth waiting to be revealed. Their daughter, now a few months old, kicked and cooed on the blanket spread out across the living room floor. She had Sarah's eyes. Marcus's smile. And a spark in her that seemed to glow brighter every day. One afternoon, as Marcus watched her reach for the light through the window, Sarah leaned in and said, "You know, she'll grow up one day and ask about all of this. What are we going to tell her?" Marcus smiled gently. The truth. That she was born into a storm. That her parents made mistakes, but they fought for her. That she was strong before she even knew what that meant. Sarah nodded, her voice soft. And that love saved her. Exactly, Marcus said, his eyes never leaving their daughter. Love saved all of us. And so the story closed, not with a dramatic twist or a final threat, but with quiet hope. A reminder that even in the darkest chapters, light can be found. And sometimes, a single act of kindness, like a young man giving up his seat to a stranger on a bus, can set off a chain of events that change lives forever. For Marcus, Sarah, and their little girl, the past was no longer a prison. It was a part of the journey. And the future, for the first time in a long time, looked bright. The end.